brought to you by Knights of Awakening. This is the Labyrinth. Today's topic is what it means to be Norse, and we're going to cover a concept that's very personal to me. Not all Norse use, maybe not even all have, but many of us in the mystic circles, at least I'd like to think many of us do, view the gods and goddesses as flows, and that's what it means to be Norse is going to cover that from a Norse perspective, using gods and goddesses as examples. But this is good for no matter what brand of paganry you are in, or even if you're not pagan, even if you're a monotheist, this can still be good to you because you can still see a single god as a flow of energy and understanding and of principles, instead of as, an individual in the way that we are. And I should say that personally, I hold both views. I believe the gods are personal, that they are flows of energy that we tap into, but I also think that they have a personality and their own goals and intents. And I think that attempting to not have that robs us of more than it gains. In my view, personally, we get more from being willing to have these polarly different and yet similar ideals of what the gods are. And this is one that needs to be explored more directly. Before I go any further, I want to thank all of you for joining us. I wanted to try to get the intros in now before I thank everyone, because otherwise everyone's going to think it's the same video over and over again. But we don't exist without you, okay? We are not here without you out there watching us, and it's your input which has been phenomenal over the past couple of videos. And I've put Thrice's video out there where I did the interview with him, and it has just been phenomenal, the feedback that we're getting everywhere on this. And I want to thank you for that, because it gives us a reason to hit on these deeper topics that have a lot more meaning and are a lot more integral, I guess, to the mystical path. It shows me that we can do more than just going over the basics until I beat the nail through the board or break the board with the hammer. So I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for commenting, for watching, for liking, for sharing and subscribing, as the old cliche is, Thank you for that. It gives us a reason to continue. So with that, gods as flows. Now, when we read about the gods in stories, we read about them as beings, as we are, men and women of great strength and fortitude. If anything, they are greater people than we are. They are more impressive, but they are still people. They're still beings with limitations and strengths and weaknesses. And yet, when we work with the gods in mysticism, we do meditations, we do workings, and every god has this different feeling, this different pulse, this different surge of something, and that is the god as a flow. We ourselves are flows. Your energy is a flow of the greater universe manifesting in a way that makes it uniquely you, just as the gods are. And when we tap into that, it's the same as tapping into someone else's energy and working with them. Anyone who's done group energy work knows a little bit better what I'm talking about. And anyone who hasn't likely knows it from the times they've walked into a room and there was someone there and their energy was just different from everyone else's. There is that distinct something. With the gods, it's a bit stronger because they are so vast that it's hard to ignore that power, that presence. Now with that, there are different kinds of gods in different pantheons, and a lot of gods are pure personifications of a single ideal. But realistically, in most of paganry, gods have things they like to do, and they have actions they do as people as well. So we'll hit on that a little bit more, I think, towards the end. For now, let's look at the Norse gods, or at least a handful of Norse gods, and their flows, and what those flows mean, and what it means to tap into them. Now, tapping in to the flow of a god is simply meditation upon them and extending your understanding into them. It's focusing on them until you can feel that connection with them. There are 1,000 ways to do that type of meditation, and there are rituals and ceremony that you can go into that will help with that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you're getting to it. It matters that you're getting there. And once you get there, here are some things that I've noted about the gods, at least from my pantheon. Or am I from their pantheon? Anyway. Odin. Okay, Odin is power in many directions, a very vast force. And he is an all-seeking force, a power of knowledge, but also of great strength. He is the power of animation, and in many ways, power of life in some ways. But he is also the power of death, the power of understanding that time is limited, the power of seeking to achieve while time is short. He is very focused in those areas, and he's very, very vast. When you tap into Odin as an energy, you're dealing with a vast power that goes in many places at many times, that attempts to seek everything there is. And it's almost limitless. It's as limited as we are to understanding that limit. Now, that is Odin as a flow. When you look at Thor as a flow, what you're looking at very distinctly differently, and I am a Thorsman, you're looking at single direction, brute force, the power of destruction and creation. And people say, well, I don't see how the power of creation is a brute force thing. And I've talked to a number of women who've given birth, and I assure you it's a very brutal and forceful thing. There's nothing peaceful and serene about that action. Thor's a fertility god and a weather god, and he has the power of raw, forceful essence. And in that, his energy is very blunt, very strong, very heavy, very boom, like being hit. You know, that is Thor's flow. Frigg's flow is more the power of the home and the hearth, the high priestess, the queen, the healer, and the keeper of the hidden knowledges and the secrets. Hers is a very feminine power, a very calming power. By the descriptions of what we would call feminine energies. And hers is very mellow, but it also has that hidden blade in essence within it, as she is, like all Norse gods, a war god or war goddess. That never leaves her. Tyr's power has a lot more to do with sacrifice, balance, and justice. It really has a lot to do with the warrior spirit as well. And what people don't realize with Tyr is that the Norse concept of justice really hinges on the idea of Tyr. It's the idea of sacrifice. To enact justice on someone or something, we are sacrificing something of the society, either in time or energy, or in locking the person up, which is time and energy, then losing that person, them losing something, to balance things. It is a contract between society and the person, the self. That's what justice is. And Tyr's energy is very much about that. It's a very, very cold, very focused, very calculated energy. And it is very sword-like. It is very cutting. And he's a very powerful war god as well. You know, he is one of the chief gods of victory. And that gives him a unique position in this, but it also means his energy is very, very direct. Thor's energy is more blunt. Tyr's energy is more sharp. That's been my experience, at least. Hiemdall. Hiemdall is the power of foresight and awareness and understanding. It's also the power of protection by knowing of emergencies before they happen, of knowing when something is coming. Heimdall's energy is incredibly focused on awareness. It's very soft in that respect, but very strong. It is like walking in to a very vast ocean that in and of itself has no water, no density. And it's that awareness that all things are the same to Heimdall and his ability to see and hear all of them. It's a heightened, super sense of awareness. And I don't even know if I'm really expressing it completely, but think ultimate clarity. That is his flow, and that flow is very refreshing, very cleansing. And now, one of my favorites. One of your favorites. Loki. Loki's is the power of the profane, of recognizing that all things have some sacredness in them, but it's also the power of trickery, the power of deceit, the power of supreme intellect, and in that his flow is jumbled. His flow is 1,000 arrows going in 1,000 directions, so that one arrow can find its mark in the place that he needs it to. It is the understanding that only through chaos is order found. Only through chaos can we achieve anything, for that a system that is in place and unmoving, nothing changes. His energy is very chaotic, very tricky, very manipulative, almost like a fine oil. So tapping into these energies, what is the purpose of tapping into them? You're tapping into the Odinic current. You're seeking wisdom, knowledge, but above all, power, rulership, and domination. Odin is the dominant force, the animate force within life, and tapping into his power is all about getting access to that. Thor, on the other hand, my patron god, is all about brute force. When you're tapping into Thor's power, you're looking to overpower and overwhelm in a single strike. You're looking for the most direct, most forward-moving energy you can. You're looking to not sidestep problems, but to run through them, even if sidestepping would be quicker, or wiser, or easier. You're looking to just blow right through. That's Thor's energy. It's brute force, and that's what you're using it for. You're looking to use Frigg's energy. You're looking for hidden magics. You're looking for healing in the home. You're looking for rulership with a more gentle hand, with a bit more wisdom, with a bit less domination, because you don't need to dominate those who love you. It is a more focused towards love and kindness, and using that energy is using it for those purposes. Not that Odin doesn't have very strong healing energies. To backtrack for a second, Odin actually has a healing poem that is incredibly useful, and I wish I'd wrote it down. We'll hit on that in a future episode because it's a valuable healing method. All right. Moving the clock forward again. That's one of Frigg's other powers is to rewind time, apparently. Tyr. Tyr's energy is like a sword or a knife cutting through. It is the power of justice, and it is useful when you need to cut through situations and circumstances, when you need to slice into a situation or a problem in such a way that you are being very sharp but not blunt. And what I mean by this, blunt energy destroys, but it doesn't necessarily destroy cleanly. Tyr's energy is all about cutting through, slicing apart, and in that leaves things a little bit less destroyed, and it uses up a lot less force. It's a lot less taxing. Tyr's energy also, though, is sacrificial. Using that flow is going to wipe you out quicker because it is a sacrificial flow, but it's powerful. One of the most powerful. Tyr's flow can also be binding, thanks to the Fenrir wolf, and it's very good for binding foes because that is something that he is associated with. So that energy can be very useful for that, but it's still very sharp. Heimdall's energy is excellent for finding things out, for seeking knowledge and guidance, for wisdom, above all, awareness. When you're tapping into Heimdall's flow, you're gaining an awareness of the entirety of the universe in an instant. And you may not even be able to fully comprehend what it is you're feeling and seeing. If you fully tap into Heimdall's flow, you know. And in knowing, you will be overwhelmed. So it's one that's taken with a bit of caution, but it's incredibly valuable to the practicing mystic. Lastly, Loki's flow. When you must get the job done, when there's no other way that will do, when it has to be done right, Loki is the energy you need to be pouring out. You need to tap into that flow. His flow is all about winning. at whatever the cost. It's all about reaching out and finding that little pebble, pardon me, finding that little pebble that you can push out the way, and suddenly everything is in your direction. Or put in someone else's way and they trip, and now everything is where you want it to be. It's about trickery. It's about getting people to do what you want them to, whether they want to or not. It's about manipulation, and it is excellent for altering people and events around people. It's excellent for getting what you want when you don't care how. Those are those gods, and there are other gods. We could get into Balder. Sorry about that, Hiemdall. Get into Balder and the resurrecting flow, or Hela and the flow of death. We could get into Freya and the flow of lust, which, that is a great flow to get into. But there's only so much time in an episode, and we're almost out of time. So I wanted to hit on the ones that I work with the most, and really explore those as a concept for you to help you advance your methods. Other systems, I made a little note, and in other systems of mysticism, other systems of worship, other ideas or ideals, and even in our current one, speaking of the Norse, but in paganry as a whole, there is this tendency for people to become confused from one god to another. I believe it was Tacitus who compared Odin to Mercury. Why, the two are barely the same, but he called Odin Mercury. He said, didn't even compare him. He said he is Mercury. He is? A lot of times in our communities, because of these similarities, because of the nature of how these gods and goddesses work and the flows that they belong to being interconnected to concepts and ideas and other energy forces that are in play, people make mistakes out there. And at least 2 or 3 times a day, I see someone mistake one god or goddess with another, or to combine the two. Even combining Freya and Frigg is very common. And that's not a bad thing. And yeah, it is wise to fill people in when they're making a mistake on that. But I also see a lot of people get very uppity. If someone says to me, well, Odin is Mercury, I say, no. From a Norseman's point of view, Odin is Odin. And I explain why. But if you're going to go out on a crusade to force someone into this idea, this point of view that, Odin can only be Odin and Mercury can only be Mercury, then you're misunderstanding the nature of mysticism. This is very subjective. And while you could say historically, when it comes down to working with them, if it works for that person, that's great. I find that a lot of people get overly upset when someone makes a mistake on this, and rather than help guide them with a kind, compassionate hand and even say, yes, those flows are very similar, which is what I do whenever someone, Odin and Mercury, those flows are very similar. They're very, very much rulership powers, dominant forces, but they're very different. Thor is Mars. No, they're very similar. They're very similar. Rather than doing that, people tend to want to jump and then call people names and threaten and all these other things, and that doesn't benefit us in mysticism. It doesn't make us any better or stronger. It simply shows that we lack tolerance. And there are a lot of groups out there that lack tolerance, and, I personally don't belong to groups that lack tolerance. I don't like religions that lack tolerance because I'm not very tolerant of that. So, to hit on this, because the flows are so similar, people are going to mess up and make mistakes, and the best you can do is try to explain how those flows and those beings are different, and what they mean, where they're the same. Someone says, well, Thor is Mars. Well, no, they're very different, but they're also very similar. Thor also is a fertility god. He is very compassionate. He is very wrathful, just as Mars is. Very angry and powerful energy, but Thor is far more blunt. And Mars, actually, there's a bit of Mars in all of the Norse gods. That is way better of an explanation for someone than to be like, well, you're stupid, and to threaten them and yell at them and belittle them. It is up to us that have been here longer, that have worked longer, and that have done this for a longer period of time to help lift others up. And if you're not doing that, and you're teaching mysticism, then you have no place. And if you're not doing that, and you're part of the mystical community, you are the problem. And I applaud you, because we all need some kind of enemy to fight in this world. And I thank you for being, the enemy that we need. In your intolerance, you will create an intolerance towards yourself, I hope, in your pursuit to degrade others. We, the rest of the mystical community, will come down on you, like the hammer of Thor. Or the hammer of Mars, whatever it takes at that point. But that's just, I wanted to hit on that these things get confused a lot, and that rather than working with these people that, they say, well, Freya is the same as Santa Morte, or something of that nature, rather than helping clarify and say, no, it's not the same. Here are the differences. Here's how they're similar, and they both have very similar flows of energy. Rather than doing that, a lot of people like to just call names and poke fun at, because, there's always someone out there who has to make themselves stronger by stepping on top of someone else. And that's not what it means to awaken the night within. That's what it means to prove that you're an intolerant jackass. So that wraps up this episode. I hope it gave you some thoughts on how to look at this. I hope it maybe added to your meditative practices, gave you some ways of getting into working with the gods and goddesses more personally, more directly, using their energy, because it is a part of you. It is a part of the flow of everything. The universe is flowing in all ways, and you can tap into that. It's different than ritual, and it's different from any form of high magic, and it's different even from sympathetic magics. It's another paradigm to use, another way of looking at those paradigms. And I think and I hope that this will bring something to you. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Pass this sucker around. Make sure people know about it. If you found it of value, make sure others get to watch it as well. If you liked it, then like it, If you didn't like it, don't like it then. If you think I'm a raving jackass and I have no right to say what I've said, leave it in the comments section. I'm always interested to read. You probably won't change my mind, but you'll definitely get my attention. And I'm a nice guy. I'm not one of those big bad boogity boos. If you don't agree with me, I'm not going to threaten you or anything. I might address it. I might address it live. But I'm not going to hold any grudges. I'm very happy to receive criticism. Very happy to have the opportunity to grow and learn with you as well. So thank you for your time. You've given me the most valuable thing you have in your day today, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I want to thank you for helping me to awaken the night within, and I hope I'm helping you awaken the night within.